Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have Doug Wydell here today conducting a training on products for plant safety. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the question feature, and we'll go over all of your questions and comments during the wrap-up section at the end. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Doug.
Thank you, Courtney. I appreciate the introduction. Let's see. So today, we're going to talk about plant safety and innovation. My name is Doug Wydell. I am the Southeast Regional Sales Manager for the Ideal Trident Group. We're going to talk about various fittings for line dedication, and we'll move on to swan fittings, hydrocarbon drain specific, chemical transfer, and then some other specialty fittings to round out what would be our toolbox for plant safety. So in our Campbell Fittings training room up in Boyertown, we have this sign: challenges create opportunities, opportunities inspire innovation, innovation solves problems, solving problems wins business. So that credo there, that's very important to us. Over the years, we've gotten a reputation of developing new fittings, something new and unique to the business. We have several patented fittings that nobody else can make. So we're typically trying to find better ways to make fittings, which in turn make our plants safer and give you some more tools in your toolbox. So let's start with swan fittings. And I felt obligated to put a picture of the swan found in a pond and say we're not talking about those. We are talking about steam, water, air, and nitrogen. And we're going to go through those and talk about how Campbell Fittings is making a safer fitting for those applications. We're going to start with steam. So the Campbell Fittings crimp bipon seal ground joint couplings for steam hose. The big thing is they improve plant safety and they save the plant money. So one of the things we like to ask is, hey, do you have steam leaks? And everybody does. And our crimp steam ground joint has saved industry an estimated $1.6 billion and counting, based on no longer having leaky fittings. So what are the problems? Well, the old style ground joint and bolt clamps create safety hazards. They leak, number one, so that's a safety hazard. That's costing them money, but it's also a safety hazard. If you see the arrow pointing on the top picture there, it's pointing directly to the opening at the hose end that follows the steam from the bolt path. So you can see here the bolt clamp just squeezes the hose and the steam follows its way out and then it leaks right there. And then there's also a leak at the old style interface of the stem and the spud. So you're getting two areas to leak on this particular steam hose. Bolt clamps also need to be retorqued. We've already mentioned the spud and stem interface for leaks. And also, most of these type of assemblies lose electrical continuity, and that's due to the method that they're using in order to attempt to ground these hoses. Typically, they'll use a staple and push one end of the staple into the end of the hose, trying to catch the wire braid, and then bend the staple hose and then insert the stem and hope that that doesn't break, hope that it doesn't corrode, and hope that it continues to ground that hose. The other problem with the old bolt clamps is they'll hang up on these grates. Those bolts you'll catch those grates and it'll just cause aggravation for the guys out in the plant. So we'll talk about how much money you're losing through this leaky hose. Our engineers have estimated that a minor leak can hiss away 2.6 pounds of steam per minute. The cost of producing that 1,000 pounds of steam is roughly $11. So if you do the math, the cost per day of one steam leak is $41. And then you just extrapolate that out to week and month. and 1 week or 1 month of a leaky steam hose can cost the plant up to $1,250. So here's the reason it leaks. The reason it leaks at the spud and stem interface. On the old style spud and stem, there's a polymer seat that's exposed to the steam, and you can see that right here. So the steam distorts the polymer, and eventually the steam is going to leak through that interface. So what the operators do is they walk through the steam section, and every time they see some steam hissing away, they whack the wing nut to try to reset it. And that works for a little bit, then eventually the steam works against the polymer again and creates another leak. So they're out there whacking the wing nuts until eventually they cannot get it to set again, so it's constantly leaking. The Campbell Fittings interface between the spud and the stem is a machine bevel, so it's hand-tight, leak-free, machine metal-to-metal connection with a Viton O-ring for a backup. There's nothing for the steam to distort. So now we'll talk about interchangeability. These cutaways are really good and give you a good visual of what's happening. You can see with the Campbell Fittings ground joint and stem, you have the metal-to-metal connection backed up by the Viton O-ring. There's nothing that's exposed to the steam. Then we go back again to the old style ground joint and spud, and you see the plastic polymer there that is going to be constantly exposed to the steam. So when you do get somebody to switch from the old style to the Campbell style, obviously the first most ideal situation would be that they buy female sets that come with our female spuds, and they change out every single spud as they're sending new hose out there. The reality is there's going to be some leftover spuds. Somebody's probably going to not want to replace spuds or forget to replace spuds, and you're going to have the old style spuds out there. Well, this illustration shows that our bevel in our stem is enough to displace the old polymer seal that's there. So at the very least, it will work as well as the old style ground joint and spud together, but actually it probably works a little bit better because the bevel is a little bit better than the bull nose there. So again, ideally you want the full change out to Campbell, but as a rolling change, as they replace hoses, our stem will work with the old style spud. Time for a poll. So Courtney's going to launch the poll for us. And if you guys would take a look at that, the question is, do you still have plants that use the old style boat clamps for steam? A, yes, B, no, and C, not sure. So it looks like we're getting a lot of response. And the big takeaway here is if you have answered A, yes, or C, not sure, this is a great opportunity for you to talk to your customers about this. And hey, feel free to reach out to your Campbell Fittings regional sales manager. We love to make end user calls. We can bring some more information with us. We can bring to you some white papers on that steam loss, that the amount of money they're losing, and we could help you present that and try to get you some more business. Thank you, Courtney. Moving on. 70% said yes, and 30% said they weren't sure. So again, we'll continue on with the electrical continuity part of this and how these steam hoses are made safer with Campbell Fittings bite to the wire ferrule. So the bite to the wire crimp achieves electrical continuity. The Campbell Fittings crimp steam is specific. It's different than our ground joint and our separate ferrule that has a smooth ID. The steam fitting has a staked on ferrule that you can see in this picture has internal serrations. These internal serrations bite through the cover of the steam hose into the wire braid to have continual electrical continuity. So It allows for safe dissipation of static electricity, and it is the finishing touch to a safe steam hose system. So in these two pictures, you see the Campbell Fittings staked on ferrule with the bite to the wire, and you see the old style ground joint with bolt clamps. Is it grounded? I know looking at this picture with the bite to the wire staked on ferrule, it is grounded. With the old style bolt clamp, I don't know for sure. The only way to be sure is to actually test that for continuity. So the Campbell Fittings crimp steam is the answer to all steam issues. No bolts to retorque or get hung up on grates. No need to hammer wing nuts. Crimp steam fittings save money by eliminating leak paths. And a safer steam hose, it produces a safer steam hose with permanent electrical continuity. So that takes care of steam. We'll move on to the rest of SWAN, water, air, and nitrogen. And with a variety of fittings, what we like to do is create line dedication through fitting style. A lot of plants attempt to do this with just hose color, but what happens is they get sun-baked after a while. A red hose looks white, yellow hoses look white. They all tend to kind of blend together after a while. So to make this, to make the plant as safe as you can for any operator that's coming on from a different site or as they move from site to site, the easiest way is to have line dedication by fitting style. We're going to eliminate the risk of cross-contamination by fitting style. We will make a safer hose procedure and safer plants, and this would apply to water, plant air, breathable air, and nitrogen, which is used often as well and is a killer. So one of the most basic fittings you find in plants, you're going to see all kinds of universal couplings, obviously. And all these universal style couplings are required by OSHA and MSHA to have a pin in them when they're coupled together. And the whole reason for the pin is so that there is no accidental decoupling or uncoupling while that hose is charged. So if OSHA or MSHA walk on site and they see a missing pin, they can fine up to $800 per missing pin, which obviously gets very expensive. So again, going back to that first slide of that picture in Boyertown, opportunities are created with situations like this, and we're going to take those opportunities and we're going to try to create something that is different than everyone else and better. So out of that, Campbell Fittings created the universal lock coupling. The universal lock is recognized as a self-locking coupling by both MSHA and OSHA, so therefore no pin is required. So if you connect a standard universal coupling to Campbell Fittings universal lock coupling, once that sleeve snaps into place, it's not going to decouple. So it is a self-locking and safer universal style coupling. It's available in hose ends and male and female threads, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch. Then we move on to nitrogen. So again, we talked about Campbell Fittings and trying to solve a problem and create different ideas that make plants safer, the different fittings that help make plants safer, make the operator's situation safer. And this new fitting came out of one of the problems. When we talk about Bose and Thor style fittings, typically, especially for me in my region, I have a lot of the Gulf Coast area. Typically what you see is here's a Thor fitting, and this is typical. You'll see it rusted together, and when the operators attempt to use this hose, if they have to pull it apart, they're going to have to use channel locks to pull it apart, and then with all the rust being there, they're not going to get that sleeve to spring back into action. So they're going to be going through a lot of fittings, getting rid of hose that the hose is fine, but it's the fittings that have gone bad. And that's due to these sleeves on our competitor's fitting being made out of plated steel. So we looked at that situation and said, we can do something better. And what Campbell did was they created a fitting that uses a high-strength zinc aluminum alloy in their sleeve. So it prohibits rusting. They're going to get much longer use out of their fittings. They're not going to be throwing hose away, or much longer use out of the hose, because they're not going to be throwing hose away because the fittings have gone bad. So in this situation, we have the Thor, which is the dual lock style, and the Bose, which is single lock style. And we make them in 3 versions or 3 varieties. Up here, you can see that there is no locking ring. It is just the sleeve. So that's one version without a secondary lock. Here is the second version. So this happens to be our Bose with a secondary lock. That lock is a plastic ring that is threaded onto the fitting and it screws up to the bottom of the sleeve. So in order to detach or decouple that hose, you would have to screw that ring down or unscrew the ring so it creates space. And then you can retract the sleeve and decouple the hose. And then the third way, we make the industry's only patented nitrogen-only fitting. So this ring, as a secondary lock, has a nitrogen warning on it for nitrogen use only. So not only is it a secondary lock, it is another visual to shout out that, hey, this is nitrogen specific. This is a warning, yellow, the universal color for warning that, hey, pay attention to this and make sure you link it to another fitting that has this yellow ring. So 3 different versions for our Bose and Thor. So any way that it works for your plant, we have it available. And so since we're still talking about air, water, nitrogen, and smaller style hoses, we also have a line of quick disconnects. Now with our being combined now with ZSi-Foster through the Ideal Trading Group, we have some more ways to, we have more ways to have fitting differentiation for each of your applications. Starting with the USB series up here. The USB series is a pneumatic quick disconnect socket, which accepts 3 different style plugs. The industrial interchange, the true plate, and the arrow, but it has a safety vent. And the operation of the safety vent is it allows you to vent the pressure that's built up in the socket before you disconnect the plug. So a little safer disconnect there because you don't have any pressure built up in that connection. The USB series only comes in 1/4 inch. We also have a safety vent series that is, again, another pneumatic QD. And this one is only going to be offered in the industrial interchange, but it gives you larger sizes, body sizes of 1/4 inch up to 3/4 inch. Also in female pipe thread and male pipe thread and hose barb. So again, that is another safety vent that allows you to vent any pressure that's built up in that plug before you or in that socket before you disconnect from the plug. And then we also have a sleeve lock feature down here. The sleeve lock is just a way to lock the plug in socket so that it could eliminate accidental decoupling. Again, you see here in this picture for the sleeve lock, when the ball bearing and the notch are lined up, it is open, and that allows you to connect the plug. And then over here in this picture, you see that a short twist of the socket is now in lock position. So those are available in throughout the pneumatic QD line, but as well as in what's more popular in the hydraulic QD line of the ISO B series and the flush face type series. So a lot of options for you to use to heck, there's not enough applications within a plant that we don't have an option for you. So taking care of the swan fittings, and then now we're moving forward to hydrocarbon drain. Unfortunately, a lot of plants in our industry still use a steam hose that has a typical ground joint as their hydrocarbon drain. The problem with this is that once the hydrocarbons get into that steam hose, you've weakened that hose, and you certainly don't want to put it back into steam use. It introduces media or material that you don't want in your steam system. What Campbell has done is we recommend our air hammer coupling to be your dedicated hydrocarbon drain fitting. So the hydrocarbon drain fitting or air hammer fitting is very similar in setup to the ground joint. You'll recognize the spud, you recognize the machined face, metal to metal, hand tight, leak free, backed up by a Viton O-ring. And of course, Campbell CRIMPNOLOGY stem and our Ferrule. The big difference is here that, number one, it's finished in a yellow chromate, so easily identifiable by sight, but also the threads on the spud and the nut are coarser than the ground joint. So even if you have a plant that switched and made the hydrocarbon drains hose be the air hammer fitting, they're not going to be able to cross-link that to a steam hose or a steam fitting or a steam spud. So it gives you dedicated lines for hydrocarbon drain. You're not going to be able to cross it with a steam fitting. Again, much safer. And that's all we're trying to do is make these plants safer and kind of make it dummy proof, that we have one fitting, match up the fitting, match it up to its mate, and you're not going to cross it with any other media. Then we move into chemical transfer hose systems. In Campbell Fittings, we have a unique fitting in this line that we have a patent on that nobody else has. So we're going to talk about chemical transfer. Of course, with chemical transfer, you're always going to talk about Cam and Groove. That's our Campbell Cobra stainless Cam and Groove Part C. We also make it with locking handles. And here is a picture of our chem joint on a chemical hose, and also a chem joint on a metal hose with a weld end. We also make these in unions. We'll get a little more deeper into these in the next few slides, but first we're going to talk about another innovation from Campbell on this next slide is the Campbell CRIMPNOLOGY swivel fitting. So this also came about because so many people have asked us in the past, do you make a male swivel? A lot of people have used or tried to use a JIC hydraulic fitting as a swivel in industrial hose. So we went about trying to solve that problem, and we did. We make this in 3/4 inch through 2 inch. And this swivel is for ease of installation. It's got a hex body on it so that you can put a wrench on it. So you don't have to turn a 20 foot length or 25 foot length of hose on your male stem. You can wrench it on with the hex and install much easier and quicker. We do not recommend that the swivel be a continuous swivel in operation. It is mainly there for installation purposes. It is only there for ease of installation purposes. So now we'll talk about the chem joint. So the chem joint, made in 316 stainless, couplings, unions, and male stems. Obviously, it's mostly used in chemical transfer, and you can see it in loading and unloading hose systems. The hose stem can be used up in certain sizes up to 450 psi, and the union can reach pressure ratings of up to 800 psi as a union. I want you to think of this fitting as a problem solver. So the threaded connection, which is easier than a flange. So let's say you're on shift in a plant, and for some reason one of your flange applications needs to be changed out once or twice or more during your shift. Instead of undoing all those bolts and putting them back together, the threaded connection is mere seconds to take care of that issue. There are cost advantages to the hill tap style fitting. Hill tap style is something you'll see a lot in loading racks, and we have a cost advantage to that. Again, hand tight, leak free, just like the ground joint, and a threaded connection. And it's much more precise than a union. Once again, you'll see within chemical transfer or loading and unloading rail cars even, you will see a hammer union. Hammer union is not a very precise fitting. It's like bringing a sledgehammer when you need something much more delicate to do the job. Our chem joint union gives you much more precision and hand tight and leak free. So hand tight, leak free, metal to metal connection backed up by a Viton O-ring. The threads of the standard chem joint are NPSM parallel threads, but we also make this in another version or another option with Acme threads. So therefore, you can have two chem joints side by side and differentiate the application based on the threads. It will not thread together, one being the parallel thread and one being the Acme thread. So again, you are differentiating your application by fitting. So giving you more tools for your toolbox. So I wanted to show you an example of utilizing as many different fittings as you can. And this we ran out of applications in this. We brought this hose board to NAHAD one year, I believe. And what it does is it shows you all the different fittings we can use for different applications. Here we have breathable air. It's going to have a green hose, but it's going to be coupled with Campbell Fittings male by female bows, okay? And this one happens to have the secondary lock on it as well. So you got the Bose fittings for breathable air. We'll read across here to plant air. The plant air is going to be coupled with the standard universal by universal lock. So again, we're differentiating those two applications. You're not going to mix plant air with breathable air. And then we can move on down to water. This one happens, we dedicated that one with a standard garden hose fitting, female by male. And then nitrogen, because you never want to cross nitrogen with breathable air. That would be a horrible situation. This particular nitrogen hose is going to be a yellow hose, and it's going to have the Campbell Fittings Thor fittings with the nitrogen warning ring on it for nitrogen use only. Then you move down to your, excuse me, basic 250 PSI steam. It's going to be a black. It's going to be the black. In this particular example is the Conitech Flex Steel 250, and it's going to be coupled with Campbell Fittings male by female steam fittings, the IMS 3B and the GJF 3B. Moving across, chemical transfer. This one happens to be the Campbell Fittings locking handle 316 male by female, cam and groove. And then we have our hydrocarbon drain hose. We're differentiating from the steam. So we have hydrocarbon drain fittings, air hammer fittings that do not cross with the steam fittings, male by female. And then this particular example has a superheated steam. So it's a metal hose, it's jacketed. And again, it still has the Campbell Fittings male by female, but the identifier of metal hose and the orange jacket is going to keep it separate from other steam. That one's actually female by female. So you see, what we're doing is we created this hose board to show an example of how many different ways you can differentiate your applications. I'm going to show you an example of one of our customers, one of our distributors did for their customer. And this is something you can get the pictures, taken, and you can bring this to one of your print shops, and they're going to help you build out this hose board. And I'll tell you, to see this hose board throughout a plant makes it very simple for contractors that aren't there full time. They move from plant to plant, and this helps them identify every single service within this particular plant. So There's never a question as to which hose is used for which service, which media, which application. If you put these throughout the plant, put them by the drops, there's going to leave little room for misinterpretation. Again, making your plant safer. So I hope I've shown you a lot of different ways today to differentiate applications by hose fitting. A lot of plants sometimes do it by hose color, but we're trying to show you an even better way by doing it with dedicated fittings per application. So here's the question: what's in your toolbox? Do you want to go to a plant with Campbell Fittings? Well, why would you? Well, number one, crimp steam couplings. Hand tight, leak free, no bolts to retorque, save money and make the plant safer. Universal lock couplings, recognized by MSHA and OSHA to be compliant without a pin. Self-locking universal style or Chicago style coupling. What else is in your toolbox? Bose and Thor and nitrogen only couplings. Single lock and double lock. We have the industry's only nitrogen specific coupling. And our Foster quick disconnect fittings to expand your offering of line dedication. We have the safety vent and the universal safety vent and the sleeve and ball lock in different configurations. So we've got a lot of options for you in this smaller diameter stuff. How about air hammer coupling for hydrocarbon drain hose? Dedicate hydrocarbon drain with its own fitting and its own hose. It won't thread to a ground joint, no chance of cross-contamination into your steam hose. Male CRIMPNOLOGY swivel fittings. Ease of installation, no twisting of hoses. Chem joint couplings. It replaces cam locks, flanges, unions, hand-tight, leak-free, very similar to the ground joint in the fact that it's hand-tight, leak-free, and backed up by a Viton O-ring, but it cannot be crossed with a ground joint, mainly because the spuds are the exact opposite. One is concave, one is convex, so there's no chance of cross-linking those. And the Camel Cobra, last but not least, Camel Cobra cam locks and flanges, locking arm cam locks, and fixed by floating flanges. So we've got your toolbox filled up, ready for you to go out there and make your plant as safe as it can be. So now it's time for some questions. I hope maybe we've stirred up some questions for you. So this would be the time to send them in. I think Jeff will help us navigate through the questions. Jeff, do we have anything as of now?
Yeah, Doug, got a few questions for you. You say nitrogen crossed with breathable air is horrible. Why is that?
Nitrogen dissipates or displaces oxygen. Nitrogen in plants mainly is used to displace oxygen in a vessel so that they can go into that vessel and do repairs. Sparking will not be an issue. So they're displacing the oxygen so that there won't be any fire. If you happen to hook your breathable air hose to your breathable air mask and you use nitrogen, it will displace all the oxygen in your lungs and you will die. Not very good.
Okay. Another nitrogen question. Can someone use chem joint fittings for nitrogen application?
Yes, you can. I like the idea of the warning that is on our Bose and or Thor, but certainly in nitrogen works in that application. The chem joint works in that application. It's hand tight, leak free, so you're not going to have any leaking issues. So it definitely can work in that situation as well.
All right. Got one more question. What is the significance of electrical conductivity in a steam hose?
Okay, so the steam that's running through the hose, it generates electrical static, and that static needs to be dissipated and throughout that hose. If not, it can lead to a discharge that obviously You've probably gotten a static discharge when you've walked across a carpet, perhaps, and then touched something metal, and you get that little shock in your finger. This situation would be much more dangerous because it'd be a larger electrical shock. A lot of time, there are applications in steam where they hook up a steam hose to a wand to perhaps clean out a vessel, and that wand is made of metal, typically racked on a metal rack. And if you go and grab that wand and that particular hose is no longer dissipating the electricity that's built up in that hose, it's going to produce a shock. And again, a safety hazard, OSHA hazard, and it can kill you. Do we have anything else?
Good answer there. So when you refer to a hydrocarbon drain hose, what are you talking about specifically? Where would you use this in a facility?
Okay, again, in any chemical plant or refinery, when they clean out the vessels and they clean out those large tanks, they're using steam to clean the sides, to clean the bottom, to basically start from scratch, get it down to a clean vessel. They use steam to do that, and obviously the steam create the steam puddles in the bottom of the vessel. They need to pump that vessel out. Those are hydrocarbons. So those hydrocarbons that are now mixed with a slurry of water that was created by the steam, and that needs to be pumped out of the vessel. That's what we need. That's what we refer to when we talk about hydrocarbon drain. It's the hydrocarbons that come out of that vessel mixed with water. And it's typically very hot when they're doing this because it's a steam hose or steam hose on a steam wand that they're using to clean out that vessel.
Right. A follow-up to hydrocarbon drain, that it would damage a steam hose. Do we recommend any type of hose for hydrocarbon drain specifically?
There are specific hoses made by the hose manufacturers for hydrocarbon drain. They're somewhat similar to steam hoses, meaning they're very durable and they're very good with heat, very good with high temperatures. And I don't know, you'd have to talk to a hose manufacturer. They're so close, they may be extremely similar. However, the big thing I was trying to get across there is that you don't want a hose that has had hydrocarbons running through it to now be placed into your steam system. It's going to introduce those hydrocarbons within the steam system and cause problems, gunk up the system, and could be damaging to your hose as well with those hydrocarbons. So in the past, people would say they use a steam hose for hydrocarbon drain, but then they throw that hose away. Unless they actually do cut that hose in half and get it off site, it may end up back in steam service.
Yeah, I would also add that you can always just ask Campbell, and we'll have a test report for basically the majority of the hoses out there. So you can see the results manufacturer by different manufacturer hose-wise when it comes to especially a hydrocarbon drain. But for all of our fittings, we'll have different test reports on different hoses.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff.
One more question. So it's specific for New England, but any particular industries that would incorporate the Campbell line? Any specific users? I could contact you later on that. But if you want to get into a general conversation about users.
Of which are we talking about? A specific fitting?
No, I think we're all
throughout the toolbox. So to me, my territory includes Louisiana. So for me, there's a lot of oil refineries that this toolbox would certainly relate to, as well as any chemical processing. But then again, you'll see steam in a lot of places. You'll see steam in paper mills. You'll see steam in a lot of plants of manufacturing that you perhaps haven't thought about. So it's always worth throwing that question out there. Hey, do you use any steam within your plant? Do you have any applications for steam? It kind of gets the ball rolling with that question. Every plant's going to have air and water, but you want to find out what else they have. So you ask open-ended questions when you're talking to somebody. You know, what kind of applications do you have within your plant? I'm assuming you have air. You have air for tools. You have water. Do you use steam? Do you have any chemical transfer? Do you happen to use nitrogen for anything? So just start asking the questions, and you'll be surprised. But especially steam, I think you'll see steam in quite a few places. I mean, here in Florida, they use steam. They use steam for the sugar cane to help liquefy it and move it along. Up in the northern regions where it gets cold, they use steam on the rail cars to help move whatever the media is that they're transferring from rail cars. And then in other situations, steam is used to cool things down, and you'll find that in steel mills. So there are a lot of different ways steam is used. So that question is out there. There are still a lot of the old style bolt clamps being used in steam, and you've seen through this presentation and others that we've done over the last couple of weeks that our steam fitting is hands down the best way to transfer steam, the best way to be using steam in our industry.
Agreed. I've even seen, you know, some end users will have, our steam is hard piped, and you know, but then on some occasions they don't even know if they have like a steam hose application, or there's a very good chance that they're using hoses in a wrong application. So there's always a good way to get to, you know, the nitty gritty of what they're actually using.
Yeah, and as a reminder for those that are listening today, Campbell Fittings is recognized, or we hang our hat on the fact that we want to make end user calls with you. You get us out there, help us get our eyeballs on what's happening, and we can help you certainly promote our product through you to create opportunities for you to expand your business, which expands our business. Reach out to your regional sales manager if you have not yet, and schedule some site visits when we can get back out there. We love to do that, and that has been beneficial to my customers as well as me, and I think you'll find the same within your own territories with your regional sales manager.
All right, Doug, that's all we have for questions.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening today. And we are continuing on with our webinar series, so please check out the schedule. I will be sending a PDF today of my PowerPoint, and also a schedule of what's coming next. I hope you tune in for some more. Thank you very much.